John Barrow was an inspirational mathematical cosmologist with very wide interests in philosophy, history, and education. He was elected to this academy just a few months ago, earlier this year. Sadly, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer at about that same time. It meant a great deal to him to be a member of this academy. And he was very concerned that he might be too frail to make his self-presentation here today. So he recorded his presentation about a month ago. And sadly, he died just a few days after recording it. So rather than me speaking about him, we're going to see this video, which was the last thing he said to the public. But this self-presentation will have to serve, sadly, as a commemoration as well, and remind us of how much we've lost through his very premature death. So can we see the video now?
Thank you, Martin. Secretariat will assist.
Right. Yeah.
I grew up in Wembley and went to school in Ealing. That part of London was not conducive to doing any sort of astronomy, but fortunately my interest lay elsewhere, with the big ideas of astrophysics and the study of the universe in a much wider sense. My first interest in science was created aged 12 by a chemistry set that I was given and then encouraged to build up into a big lab by my father and my brother-in-law. But after a year or two, my interest waned in chemistry and moved towards physics and big questions about the universe, and in particular how the laboratory physics that we did here and now seemed to govern the distant stars as well. A little later, my oldest friend and athletics coach, who had taught at UCLA, expanded my interest to encompass arts, literature, and philosophy in return for me tutoring him in mathematics and physics. This was the start of my wide interest and led me doing an advanced school program in both the humanities and in maths and physics. I always wanted to study astrophysics, and after graduating in mathematics, I was very lucky to go to Oxford to be recruited as a graduate student of Dennis Sharma's. His other famous students, George Ellis, Martin Rees, and Stephen Hawking, went before me. I largely worked alone. Everyone else was working on the Hawking effect. After being given a few little pointers by Dennis and contacts with his former students, especially Martin, I made 2 or 3 important discoveries in my first year, just working alone. Besides my technical research, I developed a wide interest in the connections between life and the universe. In particular, what allowed it to develop and persist in the universe. This culminated in the co-authorship of a substantial book about the anthropic cosmological principle and the links between life and the universe. This expanded my interest in big questions about laws and nature and the universe. And in recent years, for example, a question I've urged people to consider is to distinguish between the laws of nature and their outcomes. Physicists study the laws of nature. They're very simple, pristine, symmetrical, and physicists are most anxious to understand how they can never change, where they came from. There are very few of them. But the outcomes of the laws of nature are extraordinarily complicated and almost unlimited in scope. And it's these outcomes that make the higgledy-piggledy of the world around us and the complexity of the laws. But this is the secret of the universe. This is how you can have a very small number of symmetrical laws producing an enormous network of complicated outcomes. The laws are the domain of the physicist, but the complicated outcomes is where biology, biophysics, psychology, the evolution of the brain, genetics, it's where all that lives and where natural selection acts. However, it's important to distinguish these two worlds and not confuse them together. These are some of my recent thoughts about this area. I continue to work on the constants of nature and the nature of gravitation and cosmology. I'm still fascinated by the fact that deep questions that researchers ask about the universe, how big is it, how old is it, what shape is it, how long will it last, these are the same questions that people ask you in the street or at the end of popular talks. Finally, throughout my whole career, I've tried to play a major role in the public understanding of science and its wider interdisciplinary implications for other sciences, philosophy, religion, society, and education. This has led to 22 books, from books about maths and sport, maths and art, maths and everyday maths. And also, in 1999, I moved to Cambridge to combine my research with the part directorship of the Millennium Mathematics Project, a major outreach program for young people, teachers, and the general public about the applications of maths to all aspects of science and the world around us, providing new styles of problem solving and the application of mathematics to many, many different fields. The whole program is free to users and is one of the largest such outreach programs in the world. This has blossomed into such an extent that during the lockdown, the BBC used many of our materials for children and teachers. So this is part of the story that tells you how I've become involved heavily in public engagement and in attempts to educate people about the usefulness of mathematics and the excitement of mathematics, and to promote teaching and learning in new ways. I hope this gives you some clue as to the spectrum of my interests and all the ways in which I think that science and mathematics can inspire young people to work harder, to understand more about the universe, and simply to get better jobs. I hope that is enough of a story to give you a biographical profile of myself. Thank you.
I won't add anything to that. I think it's great that we have that record.
Thank you, Martin, for arranging that. Very touching. And again,
It was just
again, a focus on education with science and a wonderful commemoration and self-presentation. A unique moment in our academy. Thank you, Martin, for arranging that.